Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. So episode number 3 of Whiskeys, the 3 you need. We are highlighting today Maker's Mark Distillery. So as I mentioned before in episode 1 and episode 2, these are, in my opinion, the 3 must-have bourbons from each distillery. Now I'm excluding some of the more difficult ones or their special releases, things along those lines, and making these the 3, generally speaking, shelf bourbons that you should be able to go out and find on a daily basis. Let's go ahead and take a look at my number 1 must-have bourbon from Maker's Mark Distillery. Now, I know what a lot of people were thinking right away. Yeah, he's going to just show us the regular Maker's Mark. We're going beyond that. What I think this Maker's 101 has to offer, again, it's general availability for the most part. This was something that they had rolled out a couple years ago that was going to be more of a limited release. This has become much more readily available. Generally speaking, just about anywhere you go, you see the Maker's 101. Now, what this is this is the 101 proof of just their standard makers. So I think this is where this bourbon is really a nice representation of what it is that they do. Value-wise, you're looking at anywhere from about that $30, $35 price point. Again, the bourbon within this bottle probably going to be in that 6-ish year range. So you're getting a nice solid age on a bourbon. Again, like I mentioned, $30, $35. The mash bill, again, that Makers utilizes is 70% corn, 16% red winter wheat, and 14% malted barley. So again, these are all going to be wheated bourbon. So if you're a wheated bourbon fan and you know, generally speaking, the profile, what I think this has to offer right out of the gate, again, Maker's Mark, tried and true, 101 proof, offers a really tremendous value, in my opinion, again, based on its flavor profile, general ages of the bourbons within each bottling. So if I'm just recommending a standard Maker's Mark product, I try to go or suggest beyond just the regular Maker's Mark. And if they're able to find the Maker's 101, I tell people start there and see how that proof, how that flavor profile kind of works for them. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to my number 2 must-have bourbon from Maker's Mark Distillery. So my number 2 bourbon from Maker's Mark Distillery is going to be their standard Maker's Cask Strength. This, again, for me is if you're coming off of the 101 and maybe now you want to kind of explore what the true overall profile of what Maker's offers, it doesn't get any more tried and true than this. This is the standard Maker's right out of the barrel. So we're going to talk about the Maker's Cask Strength. Again, this is anywhere from about that, maybe depending on your market, $35 to maybe $45. This has kind of crept up a little bit in price over maybe the last year or two, but I still think for a cask strength wheated bourbon at $45, roughly again ages, give or take maybe that 6-year age range, it offers up the true profile of what it is that Maker's offers throughout their lineup. This is the base. This is where they start with everything, whether they're proofing it down or adding staves, whatever it may be. This is Maker's Mark, tried and true, right here in a bottle. And again, I think the overall general availability is spot on. It's just about everywhere for the most part. The proofs are going to change depending on each batch that they release, so you will vary, or the proofs will range depending on each one of the batches. And again, same mash bill, 70% corn, 16% wheat, and 14% malted barley. What it is that Maker's Mark does overall, this probably is the bourbon that I suggest or recommend the most, because for anyone who's looking for that maybe sipping wheated bourbon at cask strength, there aren't a lot of them out there, and what Maker's does and what they offer, to me, again, is an extreme value in today's day and age, and is the one that I recommend probably the most from Maker's Mark. Let's go ahead and move on to my number 3 must-have bourbon from Maker's Mark. All right, so last but definitely not least, now this is kind of shifting gears a little bit. This is the Maker's 46. Again, this is going to come in at 90 proof. Same mash bill that I've been talking about all along. The difference here is they are adding 10 different staves to each barrel. So they're going to slightly change the profile of what maybe you were getting from both the 101 and or the cask strength. And when I say adding staves, they have this metal ring. They put 10 basically seared staves on this ring, drop that ring with these staves into the barrel. Now you're going to get some slightly different or unique flavor profiles that are going to change the profile of just the standard Maker's Mark. The one reason I recommend Maker's 46 is because of a couple factors. The proof at 90 is generally pretty approachable. It really gets sweetened up once you add those 10 different seasoned staves to that already kind of sweeter profile of that wheated bourbon. So for me, anyone who's maybe looking to get into bourbon, this is kind of a nice place to start because oftentimes it's soft, it's much more approachable, it's sweet. It's not going to necessarily blow you away with proof, again, at 90 proof. So there's a lot of things that this has going for it, but it is, in my opinion, one of Maker's Mark must-have bourbons. I added it as number 3 because of a lot of that. If you are new to bourbon, I think this may honestly be even a better place to start than the Maker's 101. Again, the Maker's 101, higher in proof, 101 proof. This, much sweeter, those 10 kind of seared staves that they add within the barrels, they proof it down. You get a really, really nice, sweet, developed bourbon whiskey from Maker's Mark. I wanted to add this in as my number 3 overall bourbon to have from Maker's Mark. Now, with all of that being said, you have this slight difference here. So that profile, if you enjoy this, you may really enjoy this. This is an old bottling of the Maker's 46 cask strength, which is just this ramped up to this. And it offers a tremendous, tremendous flavor profile. So if you love all of those kind of rich characteristics that you've worked your way through with some of the Maker's Mark stuff so far, you'll probably truly, truly enjoy what this profile is. But again, the Maker's 46 is not something you find just every day on the shelf. There are times during the year that they will release these and it becomes a little bit more available, but it's not quite something that you see just on every shelf. So I wanted to exclude that, but still mention or recommend that as an option, because if you've gone through all 3 of these before, then you'll have a better idea of maybe what this profile will be in the end. And at the end of the day, this is probably one of the more popular cask strength bourbons outside of some of their wood finishing series bourbons that they have as well. But again, that's the Maker's 46 cask strength. So there you have it. Make sure you leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts overall on Maker's Mark Distillery as a whole. Are you a fan of wheated bourbons? And did I kind of hit the 3 must-haves from Maker's Mark? In my opinion, these are the 3 must-haves from Maker's Mark if you're working your way through what those flavor profiles are that Maker's has to offer. I think this will give you an extreme range of everywhere from the Maker's 101 to their Maker's cask strength to their Maker's 46, and then all the way up to finally the Maker's 46 cask strength. In a nutshell, this is what Maker's has to offer on a daily basis, maybe excluding that. But thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Again, make sure you leave a comment below. Love to know your thoughts on not only Maker's Mark, but overall the series in general. Is it something you feel that you're getting some value out of? Want to make sure that I'm continuing to do things that you guys are also looking for as well. But to highlight a particular brand and what it is that they have to offer, and in my opinion, the 3 must-haves from Maker's Mark Distillery. With that, thank you guys again so much for tuning in. If you'd like to follow me, again on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, all of those places at My Bourbon Journey. If you'd like to help support the channel and become part of the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, make sure you check out the Patreon link in the description below. And with that, it's about the journey and not the destination. Cheers.